Oh, well, let me introduce myself to you guys. Let me do the formalities here. So, my name is Caio Coppato. I work at Cultura Inglesa, São Paulo. I've been working as an English teacher for 12 years now. I've been working at Cultura for the past 6 years. Currently, I work at the e-learning as a helper most of my working hours, but I'm also a teacher, and I'm really happy to be here. I don't know how many of you here have already had the chance to deliver webinars, but for me, it's always a thrilling experience. I love it. I love to be in contact with other teachers and sharing experiences. It's always so nice to feel that energy and to share. So it's really great to be here with you guys this afternoon. Well, folks, just to contextualize things a little bit here for you, here's what I intend to carry out this afternoon with you. So I'm here to talk about the project we have at Cultura, which is our podcast. So the title of this webinar is Podcast in English, Listening with a Purpose Takes a Turn. So this is a project that I'm really proud to be part of. I've been producing the Cultura Inglesa podcast for the past 2 years. We have, since 2020, delivered weekly episodes of the podcasts on all the streaming platforms, especially Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And I'm here today to share with you a little bit of our experience with the project and some of the takeaways, right? Some of the outcome and the impact in our students at Cultura Inglesa. So, first of all, I'll start with a bit of a contextualization, so you know a little bit about our scenario here in Cultura Inglesa São Paulo, here in Brazil. Then I'm going to move on and I'm going to approach more on what's in for the students. So what are the benefits of using podcasts, and especially these tailor-made podcasts with our students as a means to enhance their listening comprehension skills. And then I'm going to wrap up by talking a little bit about the challenges, my opinions about the challenges of offering extra practices in this, what I like to call the TikTok era. Yes, this era in which the attention span of our students, and let's be honest, of us all, has been significantly reduced. Yeah. So first things first, I would like to just to contextualize here to you, talk to you a little bit about Cultura Inglesa. Yeah, for those of you who are not familiar, or you might be speaking from other countries. So Cultura Inglesa is a British culture institute here in Brazil. Yes, we are a private, non-for-profit organization. Cultura Inglesa São Paulo is set in 3 states in Brazil. It sounds a bit weird because São Paulo is a state, but the institution, it's actually set not only in São Paulo, but also Bahia and Santa Catarina. Cultura Inglesa São Paulo has recently acquired Cultura Inglesa Rio, so we are now present in many more states in Brazil, right? So we are now present nationwide here. So we have a lot of students, a lot of different accents, a lot of different cultures inside Brazil. So in Cultura Inglesa São Paulo only, so in these 3 states, we have more than 35,000 learners. Our learners range from very young learners until adults, right? So we're talking here about a context of a monolingual country, right? Where the L1 is the Brazilian Portuguese. And here in Brazil, many people study English as a second language, especially for working purposes or migration, sometimes job opportunities or studying abroad. So many of our teenagers in the upper and lower mid class, they usually have access to the opportunity of studying English in private schools such as Cultura Inglesa, right? So having this scenario in mind, and with the coming of the pandemic, Cultura has faced dramatic changes as many schools, right, all over the world. So we had to adapt a lot. We had to think on how to transition from face-to-face in-person lessons to remote lessons. And like us all here, I'm sure you all have faced the same endeavor. We had to learn and reinvent the wheel. Yes. And part of that experience of offering our students benefits studying from home, Cultura Inglesa created something called wow moments. So we decided to create a series of products in which we could enhance the students' opportunity in the digital world. So via our Portal do Aluno, via our website, the student would have access to practice exercises, webinars, games, and also podcasts. Right. So I've been working at Cultura for a while, and I've always been an enthusiast of podcasts. I really love that media. And at Cultura, we have once a year our Cultura Inglesa Colloquium, where we have our group of teachers and other guests from many different parts of the world who come to share their experiences and deliver talks and workshops and seminars. And I remember that in the 2019 edition of the colloquium, we had for the first time some sessions which were delivered remotely, live as webinars, as we're doing here now. And as a teacher working full-time that year, I know that many of you will relate when I say that. I had a very busy life. So I was, commuting, from point A to point B in the city, going from, sometimes working in different branches, with a messed up timetable, a lesson in the morning and then a lesson in the evening. So I found that listening to the colloquium talks was very time effective for me. So it was like listening to a podcast. It was a really time saver and a nice way to optimize my time as I was in the subway train or as I was driving in a Uber or whatever. And I thought that creating a podcast, not for teachers, but for our students, a podcast in English made by our teachers to our students would be a good idea. During the pandemic, you might have heard that the number of people listening to podcasts increased significantly. We all had to learn and adapt during the pandemic, right? We all had to learn how to work from home, how to study from home, work out from home, and basically do everything, right? And I myself see as one of the benefits of working remotely is that we can kind of optimize our time a little bit better. Some people might relate to that. Some people I know that hate working remotely. Yeah, but in my case, I've always liked doing things from home because I can, do things and organize these time gaps way better. And I myself, as an avid listener of podcasts, have started to consume podcasts even more during the pandemic because I was doing the dishes, or I was preparing my lessons, or I was doing, my household chores here. And even though I've had a problem sometimes, watching my Netflix series or playing my video games or even reading my books, listening to podcasts was something that have always been part of my routine because of this possibility of multitasking, right? So we can be doing one thing and still be listening and enjoying podcasts. So I think this is a type of media that it's not new, right? So we're talking here about 2022 and the 2 past years, but podcasts, they've been there for a long, long time. But it seems that people, they have rediscovered the media, right? So it has become very, very popular. So that's when the academic department, and to be more precise, the e-learning department here at Cultura, we started to think about and plan our podcast. So we would have our podcasts in English with themes that were relevant to our students and with topics that they find interesting and accessible to everyone. Yes, really accessible. So anyone could enjoy, and students of all levels in the CEFR would be able to take some benefit. Yes, and at the end of a first year, we had a great impact in the numbers. So this is the Spotify end of the year analysis. They offer these uh, infographics. So if you guys are familiar with podcasts as users, usually they show you that data in the likes of what were the main artists you listen to, how many hours you spend listening to music. Well, it's the same for podcasters. They show us that data. So as you can see, at the end of the year, we had this increase here in the amount of listening hours, 650%. We had over 500% more of followers and streamings on that year, and for 126% increase in the number of listeners. So we started in 2020, and by the end of 2021, we made that progress with our podcast at Cultura. Yeah. So you might be wondering why to produce a podcast? Why not to use other podcasts that are already available in there, or even what's the point of using podcasts as part of an English lesson or an English school whatsoever? Well, as I was preparing for this webinar, it occurred to me that in webinars we have to sound more academic, right? So it looks nice to have a famous linguist quote to illustrate some points, right? So I decided to choose one from my favorite linguist, who is Noam Chomsky. I really love him for many reasons. And back in 1968, Chomsky gave an interview to BBC London. And in this interview, he mentioned something about listening skills, right? And how to work on listening comprehension skills, right? And this is part of what he said. Chomsky said, I think we probably should try to create a rich linguistic environment of the intuitive heuristics that the normal human automatically possesses. So what I understand from that is that once learners are able to work independently and take control of their learning process, or in other words, the more natural, the more spontaneous the learning process is, the best it is for the learners. Yes. So what was the idea? The idea of creating a podcast in English made by Cultura Inglesa teachers for our learners was that we were not creating material. We were not creating listening tasks. We were producing, and we are producing, a podcast. We are producing a real life podcast with themes, with guests, and with interviews, or with discussions that are relevant for our learners, right? So in partnership with our marketing department, we try to understand via social media polls and other means what were the biggest interests of our learners, right? So for the past 2 years, these were some of the themes that we explored in our weekly episodes. And if you guys click the link here that is available to you in this webinar, click to follow our podcasts, you're going to be able to see the list of episodes we have in there. And the idea is that each month we would bring a new topic, and we would give our teachers in the house the opportunity to explore these themes with their guests. So they would be able to invite their fellow teachers from their branches, or someone they think it would be interesting to talk about some cultural aspect. Last year, we had a whole month on cooking, and one of our teachers, Bernardo Zacaron from Cultura Inglesa Vila Mariana, he had this brilliant insight of talking about food around the world. And for the whole month, he invited one teacher from the house from a different part of the world. So we had an English, we had an Australian, a Canadian, an Iranian teacher sharing their own insights and experience about their country's cuisine and their favorite foods. What I'm trying to say is that the whole point, the whole idea was to create a podcast that was enjoyable and that served as real life experience, right? So just like any other podcast they might be listening to, but with the advantage that those episodes, they were created, they were hosted and delivered by their teachers, the teachers they have lessons with, teachers they know, right? So we wanted to bring that, maybe that experience of being in touch with a web celebrity, who knows, right? Oh, I listened to my teacher in one of the episodes. Oh, my teacher was a guest in Cultura Inglesa podcast. So it has been a tremendously nice experience, both for learners and for the teachers, because teachers, they really love to participate and share their ideas and talk about their experiences in the podcast. And let's face it, if you guys teach teenagers, even some of the adults, they are always curious about the teacher's stories. And we not always have the chance to share some story, right? Some experience in the class, right? And students, they seem to have raised this bond and this connection with their teachers when they listen to their own stories. So it has been really, really nice. So as I said, it's not meant to be used as a pedagogical material. However, it offers our teachers a great opportunity to explore it as they find useful. So you can use it as a warm-up or a leading in a lesson. You can use as a listening comprehension task per se. You could assign it as homework. And the idea is that it's going to be something more familiar, right? So it's like teachers speaking English. Students, they seem to have this impression that it's easier to understand teachers, right? Because, well, when we're in class, we grade language, right? We try to make ourselves understood, which is not necessarily always the case in the episodes of the podcast. We try to make it as natural as possible when we are talking, but at the same time, we try to make it accessible somehow. So one of the ideas we had to make it, good for everyone, let's say, even for those that are more in the elementary level, so they could try to learn something from the episode, was the creation of a part of the episode right towards the end of the discussions, in which we start to work with some emergent language that has, appeared in the conversation, and we start to ask questions to each other. I'm going to share it. I'm going to show you here because I've been talking about podcasts here, and I'm just showing you images. I'm going to play you here a part of the last week's episode, which we talked about films that everybody loves, but we don't like so much. So after the discussion and talking about the films that are our least favorites, or at least films that they seem to be, in a good color with the critics, but not so much with our own tastes, we started discussing some vocabulary items that were used in the episode. Let me share it here with you so you know what I'm talking about. Just a second. Here from Spotify. Of our episode where we recap on some useful and interesting expressions that have come across in our conversation, so as to solve your curiosities on how do we say a lot of things we want to say in this context of our conversation about movies in English. So, teacher Igor, how do you say logo de cara in English? Like logo de cara no filme. How do we say that in English?
But we would say from the get-go, right? From the very beginning, from the get-go.
Okay, from the get-go. Okay.
Yes.
So the movie John Wick is really shocking from the get-go because the dog is murdered. Okay, I like that. Cool.
All right. Well, Deborah, how do you say mais do mesmo in English?
Oh, we say cliched. Okay, it's more of the one kind. It's a formula. It's more of the same.
Is there a film you think is cliched?
Yes, John Wick. Sorry, Caio. I know how much you love it, but for me, it's a cliched movie.
Yeah, now I have to agree with you. It is.
It's a guy seeking for vengeance on his dog.
It's a puppy. Let's not forget. It's
yeah. Sorry, guys.
It's a puppy, a very cute one.
Who wouldn't go out murdering people because they had their puppy killed? I mean, standard course of action.
Yeah, of course. It's not cliche. It's a matter of having a heart.
Well, Caio, I have a question for you. How can we call a movie which is sucesso de bilheteria in English?
Oh, that's a good one. We call it a blockbuster.
And is there a movie that you consider to be a blockbuster?
Oh, many of them. Igor mentioned Titanic. Titanic was a blockbuster of its time. Yeah, every Star
Still
Wars
is.
movies are blockbusters, right?
Yay! Thank you, thank you.
Right. So just for you guys to have a taste of it. Yeah. Uh, well, so as you could hear, just to reinforce the idea here. So this is the very last part of the episode in which we discussed some emerging language that has popped up in our conversation during the episode, right? So we discussed a few of these vocabulary items that we thought that were interesting that pop up during our conversation as we are recording the episode. And then we ask each other questions in form of how do you say, right? Which is let's say, a standard question, right? Students learn, right, since the very elementary levels. So I guess that this way, even very beginner students, they might profit from the episodes. And the idea is that we make it clear at the end of this part of the show, let's say, that all of those words that we are discussing, they had been used during the episode. So if they did not get the chance to listen to them or identify them, they could listen to it again, and they could try to spot these words in the context. So I guess it's a little task inside of the episode, if you know what I mean. So this way we make the podcast at the same time, genuine and authentic as a real life episode, as you could see, right? We are all having fun in there. We are all chatting very naturally, but at the same time, there is some kind of pedagogical goal in there embedded for our students. You know. Well, guys, I hope you have the chance to listen and get to know our podcast. If this has inspired you somehow, I strongly recommend you to maybe start your own podcast project with your English schools or places where you work. It could be a very nice idea. Um, it takes some work, it takes some knowledge, but it's not the end of the world. We started the podcast here with only one person working as a producer and another person working as an editor. Sometimes this producer and editor, they were the same people. And all we needed was the help of our teachers as hosts and bringing guests to the show, helping us, writing the the screenplays, writing the topics, and so on. I'll be taking some of your questions here. I have some questions here in the chat. I'm going to share some of them here with you. So you guys are welcome to ask me some questions here from now on, and I'll be addressing them as they come. Yeah. So we have here, let's see, I think I have to stop sharing here. And how do I make this available again? Here, publish. Okay, so Fernando asked, I'm curious about something. What percentage of teachers and how often the teachers actually take part in the podcast? So usually we have a theme every month, right? So let's say, well, this month we're talking about films. Next month we'll be talking about relationships. The other month we'll be talking about cooking and so on. So for every month, there is one teacher who usually volunteers in the beginning of the year or beginning of the semester. And that teacher is going to be responsible for all the 4 or 5 episodes within that month. That one teacher is the host of the show. So he's supposed to write the episode and invite other people to be part of the episode as guests. Usually there is 1 or 2 other guests other than the host recording the show. So we could have about, let's say, 4 to 8 other teachers taking part, not considering the host. So 9 to 11 teachers every month. All of our teachers have the chance to be part of the episode as long as they volunteer or they accept our invitation. Sometimes we invite some teachers when we think that they know a lot about some topic, and if they are available, they usually accept. Another question here. It's a question from Fernando Aguiar. And Fernando asked, can students make their posts too? I guess Fernando is talking about the podcast. We have plans to invite some students to come to the show as guests, not as hosts, but to be part of the episode, of the discussion. We have not done that yet because it takes a more careful selection. And as we work with deadlines, sometimes we cannot risk recording a podcast and not using it later on. But we have already recorded with members of the Cultura Inglesa staff who are not teachers, and they are Cultura Inglesa students. So we had the experience to record with people that have different levels of proficiency, and it was a very nice experience as well. We've done that too. Okay, so I have another question here. It's a question from Alex Hughes. What's your favorite podcast episode so far? Oof, Alex, you got me. There's so many. There are so many nice episodes. If I had to recommend just one episode to everyone who never listened to our podcast, I guess I would definitely recommend the last episode of last year. It was this one here. What really happened this year? So in this episode, we did a little retrospective of the year of 2021. So it was a very nice episode that really wrapped up the year, in which we talked about many of the topics that we explored throughout the year in the podcast. And we also talked about a few things that happened in 2021. And let's face it, they were not a few, right? There were many, many events in 2021. Nice. I have here, well, it's not a question, but Fernando said, I love the cat. Thank you. The cat says thank you. His name is Anakin. He just came back from the vet, so he's in need of attention now. But thank you very much. A technical question here from Juliana Cruz. And Juliana is asking us here, in terms of, okay, I finally can make these questions visible to you guys. Sorry, I was just reading them to you and you were not able to see it. Now I found a way to do it. So Juliana Cruz asked, in terms of equipment, what did you need to start? Well, Juliana, not much. I have a major in audiovisual, right? So when I was in college, it was tremendously difficult to record podcasts or radio shows, whatever you may call it. But nowadays, with a notebook and a decent pair of headphones, you can do marvels. So I would say that the essential equipment would be stable internet connection and a good microphone, right? Usually, if you have a headset like these standard Microsoft headsets, this one here is called Live Chat. It's a cheap headset by Microsoft. It's used for, like calls, but it's got a very good microphone in it, which it's a condenser microphone. So your voice is very clear. So I would say that to begin with, and stable internet connection. We usually use online recording tools to do it. There are some tools that you can use online that they record the episode in channels for you, so you can have 2, 3, or 4 participants, and each person's audio is recorded individually, and that makes editing way easier. When it comes to editing, there are a few tools, free tools like Audition. Sorry, not Audition is the one by Adobe. Audacity, which is free. Some of you might be familiar. I think it's quite popular. It's very easy to use as well. Audacity is a free one. Nowadays, we use Audition, which is one by Adobe. So those of you who know how to work with the Adobe suite, it's a way to go. But you don't need much, right? A good microphone, stable internet connection, and you can use some free online tools that will do the job for you. And a lot of trial and error, right? A lot of strength of will to learn how to use these tools. Let's see. Another question here from Juliana as well. Is there an ideal length? Well, Juliana, we did a lot of, attempts until we finally found the right format and the length of our episodes. It seems to us that it's ideal that an episode is no longer than 20 minutes. So I would say that the sweet spot is between 15 to 20 minutes. Much longer than that, people seems not to be interested. There are not so many plays in episodes that are very long, from my experience, right? And if it's too short, maybe you cannot develop the topic that much. So I would say the ideal is a range between 15 to 20 minutes. This is not written in stone, right, guys? I'm not saying that a half an hour episode cannot be interesting. The one I recommend to you, I think it's longer than half an hour, but in average, right? It varies from case to case. Okay, let me see. A question from Deborah de Oliveira. When teachers record a podcast, do they do it as a volunteer work or do they get paid for it? Good question, Deborah. Here at Cultura, the teachers who are responsible for the episode, the ones that are chosen to be the hosts of that month, they get paid for the hours they invest. Yes. The teachers that are invited to participate as guests, they don't. But the one who is actually working, let's say, writing and recording and using their times, they are paid to be responsible and work, right? Because it's work, let's face it, right? It comes as working hours for them. A question here by Fernando. What sites or tools would you recommend which can help us in mounting a podcast? Yes. So I'll recommend to you guys here some tools. I mentioned them before, right? So I'm going to recommend a few tools here for you. So this is what you can use. Let me open it here to show you. So this is what you can use in order to record your podcasts. Let me share my screen here with you. Right. So this is the one we use, right? So this is called Zencaster. Yeah, it's free. And you can create your episodes here, right? You name your episode here, and then you have options, right? You can record audio and video, or just the audio, which is what we want. And we can show video, right? We can make it as a video call. And then, as I told you, as you invite people here, the audios, they are going to be recorded in channels, right? So each person joining this link that you can just click here, invite, copy this link and share with other people. They join this room here, and you just press here, start recording, and then each person will be shown here, and each person's audio is going to be recorded in a different track. So you can use it, and then you download it as an MP3 file, and you can use it to edit later on. It's called Zencaster, just like that. And this is one that I recommend for recording. And then as for editing, I guess a good one for editing would be this one here, the software I told you about, which is this one here, which is called Audacity. You can download it for free on Windows, Mac, or Linux. It's really easy to use, but it takes some training, right? You might have to watch some tutorials on YouTube, but it's very intuitive. It's very simple and easy to use. I reckon is a good beginning. I think you're going to find it useful as starting tools. Yes, it's called Zencaster. Let's see if we have any other questions. Okay. Okay, I have a question here. Let's see. Okay, kind of off topic, but what do you think about TikTok? Do you think it's a good idea to do something like that? Is it viable since the attention span of students are not that long? So yes, Dalila, great question, right? So I talked about these challenges, right, of trying to get students' attention in this, what I like to call the TikTok era. Yeah. I'm not a boomer myself, right? But I'm 36 years old, and I was caught in the TikTok wave. And I suffer from that evil myself. My attention span nowadays is really, really, really small, really small. It seems that I got used to 3 minutes long videos, and for me it's terrible. For me this is a nightmare. It's really hard for me to watch a movie, to binge watch TV series, which is something that we were used to doing until the other day. And I think that we have to learn how to use these tools at our favor. Yeah. I mentioned that the podcasts, they are still viable in my opinion, and they do not really compete for attention because they are something that you can do simultaneously, right? You can listen to a podcast while you're driving, you can do it as you're doing dishes, or even as you're playing a game, right? A lot of people, they like play video games listening to their favorite podcasts. So about TikTok, I think that it's a nice platform to be explored. I think that people who can produce content for it, because a very specific type of content there, they do it very well. We have teachers in the house. We have teachers at Cultura Inglesa that they excel at producing TikToks. And I think it's a whole other ocean there to be explored. I would really like to get to know more about TikTok, maybe on the next webinar, who knows? But I personally like it. I think it's got a lot of potential, even for educational purposes. I follow a lot of people on TikTok with a wide variety of interesting topics. Okay. I'll share here the links, guys, to you of those tools that I recommended, just to make it easier for you to find, right? So once again, I recommended you Zencaster for recording podcasts. So there you go. It's in the chat here. Zencaster it is. And the other one here, in order to edit your episodes, you may use the Audacity. This is the link, and you can find it here. Okay. Well, so this is it. Oh, if you guys have no other questions, I would like to say thank you very much for your participation and taking your time. I would like to make myself available to you in case you guys have any further questions, if you need any kind of help with anything related to, podcasts or any kind of thing related to listening comprehension tasks using podcasts as a means, or if you want to share some insights and some of your ideas, please do. After all, the ESL community is a very small world, right? Even though we have a lot of people, it seems like somehow we're all connected. And I think that the beauty of it all is that we're always sharing and we're always learning a lot from one another. Yeah, so you guys can send me an email. You can also add me on Instagram if you want, and we can keep in touch. Yes. So you're asking here, is this being recorded? Yes, this is being recorded and is going to be available on Disal YouTube channel as soon as possible. So thank you very much, guys. I hope you have a great weekend. I hope you enjoy listening to our podcast. Don't forget to click here and start following us on Spotify, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you and have a good day. Bye.